As promised, I bring into you now the one and only Joe from Ozone Late Night. Joe, how are we doing tonight?
Oh, we're doing very well, because we have a fun movie to talk about that honestly I had not seen. That I have not seen any of these movies before. This is a new one to me. I've heard of it, but I never actually saw this one. So this was all new and all great.
Joe, it warms my heart to know that you have not seen this movie until I just suggested it to you, Joe. This is one of my favorite 80s pictures. It's one of my favorite Italian pictures, and everybody knows how I like my 80s, from post-apocalyptic Italian movies to the Killer Crocodiles to the 1990 Bronx Warriors, and we'll get back to that in a second. But this one is one of my top favorites. It's probably in my top 5 or 6, somewhere in there, of my favorite Italians movies that are ripping off American productions. Even though this is filmed in America, I believe it was filmed in Utah. But we'll get into it in a second, Joe. But I guess we'll just say what the movie is. Joe, I can't emphasize enough how happy I am that you have never seen this before first.
Yeah, and I am a fan of Bronx Warriors, so I knew Mark Gregory as soon as I saw him on the screen, Escape from the Bronx. He has one of, I think, our shared favorite character names, which is Trash. There's some great characters and great films with that name, so as soon as I saw him, I was immediately into it. And yeah, we are talking about 1983's, I saw it as Thunder, but it's also apparently known as Thunder Warrior, which is a magnificent piece of Italian ripoff film, as you said, which is, I would say, 95% First Blood. I don't know if there's anything else to it besides First Blood, because that's definitely the template, right?
Yeah, and we'll get into it. I'll have a synopsis in a second, but yeah, I mean, that kind of is the synopsis. I mean, we get it. I mean, there's a lot of in 1983, especially in an Italian 1983 picture. As we said, this is shot in the U.S., mind you, but there's a lot of the politically incorrect language and stuff like that. If more 24 woke cinema people are offended by that kind of stuff, I mean, you should be offended, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? They're going to get a lot of language and stuff like that is not very nice. It wasn't very nice back then, let alone many years later, Joe.
Well, and I think that's exactly the intent. Whether the time period for something like this doesn't matter, because the people that are saying these things are meant to be the scummiest people in the movie. You are meant to hate them. When language like this is used like this, I don't think anybody should be offended, because the point is, these are not the good guys saying this about, good people. These are the bad guys saying it about our hero. So you are meant to understand that these are hateful people, and that's why you want to see them get blown up. That's the point, and they use it properly in this film. So I don't think anybody in whatever age will have a problem with how this movie is using it. This is exactly, if you're going to use language like this is how you use it, because you just want to see these people get destroyed, and that's what happens.
So we mentioned this is 95% First Blood, but we'll play the game. Joe, when we watched 1983's Thunder, or Thunder Warrior, if you will, what did we watch?
Well, when you start Thunder, you better get ready for another action-packed Italian ripoff, everybody, because as we said, this is a massive slice of First Blood coated in a frosting of bad voice dubs, excessive slow motion, Native American slurs, and destruction. In this film, Mark Gregory is declaring war on corrupt cops and construction companies who are threatening his family's ancient burial ground, and you can prepare to see police cars and racist deputies get annihilated because Bo Svensson called down the thunder and now he's got it.
That's amazing, Joe. And you know what? I think a fun moment, I think we're just going to get to it right off the bat, because I don't want to forget this, and I think it's really fun to do. And I'll go first, but pick something in Thunder. And by the way, I guess the audience can probably feel this by now. I'm sure you can. I love this movie. I absolutely adore this movie. I can't speak highly enough that everybody should watch Thunder. And I watched it on Tubi. Of course, I have the old DVD and stuff, but or I might have the VHS, actually. But anyways, I adore this movie, so I'm not going to bash this too much. But I think a fun game to play with Thunder is pick a moment that's not like First Blood when you watch it. And, I'll go first, and I'll say the one thing is, we have First Blood, and at the beginning, John Rambo comes across immediately sympathetic. His friend is dead. He goes to his family. He gives the picture of his unit to his widow or whatever it was at the beginning of the movie there in First Blood, and then he walks off somberly with that great musical score and stuff like that. Very sad. In Thunder, it's about like a Native American burial ground that he's protecting and the treaty that was signed. I'm sorry, but you have a stone iron heart if it doesn't tug on your heartstrings when you see Mark Gregory sitting outside the bank or whatever it was with his Native American treaty saying they can't build on that. That's heartbreaking, Joe. But I think that's one difference right off the bat that we establish. Oh, okay, this is First Blood, but this part isn't.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one. And the other aspect, which is related, is that this movie multiple times will suddenly deploy the fact that multiple characters are at least partially Native American, and that becomes the reason why they suddenly help out Thunder. Almost a comic effect when you see people otherwise that you're like, oh, he's going to kill him. And so they're like, you know what? My grandmother had a cousin who had a best friend who had a birthday party where one of the attendants was 1/8 Cherokee. So now I'm going to help you. And suddenly now we have a new ally. And it happens all over the place. But you are right. The weird part about that is you're correct. One of the things is, much like First Blood, which is a great film, and the reason that part of what makes it so powerful is you know that there were veterans who were treated this way. And that's what makes you angry right off the bat to see Stallone treated that way. And in the same vein, we know that Native Americans in this country have been treated terribly all the way up to now. And so while this may be exaggerated, I have no doubt some variation of this has happened. We know that. And so that lends it a weight that otherwise this type of film probably wouldn't have. So that's probably the biggest difference. But in the same way as First Blood, it does immediately put you on the side of this character who appears to not want to hurt anybody until he just keeps getting pushed around and spit on. And there's only so much somebody's going to take. And that's what gives it the weight behind the schlock, which is great. But there's also this emotional core to it that works so well. And so I understand why they borrowed from First Blood, and they borrowed well.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it even. That was beautiful, Joe, actually. But yeah, you're right. And I think, he doesn't come across aggressive. There isn't any kind of big stereotypes that even in the 80s you would see, for Native Americans and stuff like that. And maybe that could be pure ignorance on the behalf of Italian filmmakers, but we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt here, I think, Joe, and just say, hey, they did that right. Yeah, he comes across, he's trying to do it the right way. He's going to the bank with his treaty. He goes to the cops who smash his treaty. If that doesn't get your blood boiling, I don't know what will, kind of thing. You clearly have the stereotypical cops from First Blood, where you got the guy, he dies when he falls out of the helicopter trying to shoot Stallone, but that's clearly the mold of the main chief police officer. Bo Svensson here, he's just trying to do his job. He doesn't really come across as a bad guy, but he's not a good guy either. But he comes across as trying to do his job and kind of rein in a police force that have decided, hey, okay, he's our sheriff, but we're going to go after this guy anyways. So, Svensson, I think, and he's in the sequels, and we'll get to that at the end. But yeah, Svensson, a strange character in this. But I will say this, though, when you see Bo Svensson's name on there, he immediately adds the credibility that this is a quality B movie. This isn't going to be just backyard junk kind of thing. The cinematography in this movie is gorgeous. When we get to it's not the Grand Canyon, because I know they shot this in Utah, but wherever the hell that is. The canyon where we have Stallone jumps off the hill or whatever it is and plunges down into the trees. Well, Mark Gregory here, Trash has a death-defying jump off of a cliff into water, which is amazing, Joe.
Yeah, this film was shot in Monument Valley in Utah, and for an Italian ripoff film, it has got some gorgeous cinematography, as you said. I mean, this is a step above most movies like this because they shot it on location in an absolutely fantastic place. And so, again, all this stuff adds up to a movie where when you read about it, you think, oh, okay, I know what this is. But then you watch it, and it is so much better than that. I mean, I agree. I was so glad I'd never seen this because I was blown away by it. I just had a blast with this, not only because I was entertained by it being what it was, which is, First Blood through an Italian lens in America, but also just a gorgeous film that works beautifully. And I agree about the Svensson character is really interesting because they don't play that character as either purely evil or, secretly on Thunder's side. He's almost just a pure politician. He just stays in the middle. And all he's trying to do is preserve his own position, which is unusual for a movie like this.
but not unusual for a politician. So
right, but that's normally in a movie like this, you get the basically the what's the actors. Yeah, or Brian Dennehy, a Brian Dennehy type, where you're just, okay, I know what this guy's about, and you're just going to want to see him, dead, because he's going to get worse and worse. Svensson just comes off as, I just want this all to be over so I can go back to doing what I was doing and get an aspirin already, and that's it.
Well, we mentioned the differences from this and First Blood, which I think are fun, and we just touched on one. And that's going to be my second pick about that kind of thing is First Blood. We're up in the Pacific Northwest, lots of woods and forests and greenery and stuff. I'm going to say this, and I know, this might be controversial to some, but I think the photography and cinematography is better, in terms of like wide, grand shots and stuff in Thunder. I think it's gorgeous. It's a completely different setting. There's no trees in Thunder, ever. It's set in like the desert and a canyon and all this stuff. I think that's another big difference. We're in a giant Dust Bowl setting in Thunder. There's no place to hide, really. He's always out in the open. When he's running, he's just hoping not to get shot because there's no cover anywhere. It's a little bit different than First Blood there.
Well, yeah, it keeps it from just being a cheap, and a lot of low budget movies do the thing where, okay, the woods are cheap to shoot in, so we'll just go in the woods and you don't care what it looks like. In First Blood, it makes a lot of sense because he was in Vietnam, so he was probably in a lot of jungle, so the woods make sense. They're a natural place for him to feel comfortable. And in this movie, it makes sense for Thunder as he's coming home that this is where he'd be comfortable, even though, yes, not much cover. Obviously, if you don't have water, you're going to die in a few days. So there's more of an inherent danger in the desert than in a rainforest or a jungle setting. But it works really well to set the movie apart. So yes, there's all these parts where you instantly know where they come from, but instead of just doing it exactly the same in a way that's boring, it manages to change just enough that you are re-engaged with it, even if you know pretty much beat for beat where it's going to end up until the end, which is very different than First Blood.
We're going to get to that. And yeah, and you know what? I think one thing too that is worth mentioning. Of course, the ending is drastically different, but we'll get to that. But the two things we mentioned: scenery, the kind of backdrop at the beginning with the Native American cemetery he's trying to protect, and the treaty and stuff. None of that's in First Blood. So there's your two big differences, and then the third one being at the end, of course. But other than that, there's a lot of similarities, kind of thing. But I think something this movie does beautifully, Joe, and you kind of touched on it already. This makes you hate the bad guys in this movie. You hate, the antagonists in this film, not only because they're just racial, just not politically correct jerks kind of thing, but they do all the prerequisite hazing and stuff like that. I guess at the beginning of First Blood, his torture is kind of when they capture him and he's in the jail in Oregon or wherever he is there. This one, he's outside and they tow rope him behind a pickup truck, Joe.
Yeah, Antonio Sabato plays another really, truly villainous character who is one of a group of people that eventually start to work with the cops, which you kind of see coming, but once they're together, you kind of have an idea of everybody who has to get killed or at least injured in this movie. But yes, he gets dragged behind a truck. And this is, of course, after he has tried to go through the process. This is another important point. He tried to do everything they told him to do peacefully and lawfully, and it just was, nope, there's no chance, get lost, and they just want him gone. And then on top of that, that alone would be almost enough to go, okay, something's got to give here. But then, yeah, they're dragging him behind a truck. Eventually, they burn his grandfather in the cemetery, which, I mean, at that point, I mean, it's almost too much for a movie like this, but at the same time, it is you don't want anybody alive at that point. You just want them to blow up the whole town once that happens, because it's so just brutally done. It's not, they don't care. They point out that they did it. I mean, they're basically giving him every license to go after all of them and all their families at that point.
Yeah, and I will say, you mentioned his grandfather burning in the cemetery there. And when we say cemetery, just to give you a visual, although people, you should go watch this right now. I will get the visual for you. It's not like a traditional looking cemetery, obviously. We're in like a cave kind of thing where there's like 8 headstones in it kind of thing. But it works. You'll have to trust me on that. It works. Anyways, yeah, his grandfather is burned to death there. And then we have right around then, Joe, or actually, I think right before it was established, the only character, an unnecessary character in the movie that I really don't like, and it's that damn reporter, Joe. We don't need him because if I think it's one weakness of Thunder or Thunder Warrior, I would say it's maybe 10 minutes too long. And it's not a long movie. It's probably an hour and 35 minutes. But when you talk about direct-to-video during that period, what's that golden runtime of Roger Corman? An hour and 23 minutes, an hour and 24 minutes. It makes a difference, people. And that reporter character is annoying. I can't tell, even though he's supposed to be a good guy, I'll just threaten the press. And I'm white. I'm going to come in and save the day by putting you on television. I don't think the Native Americans really wanted to hear that. They wanted solutions. But anyways, Joe, I think that was the one character in this I just didn't jive with, that I think they were trying, and maybe this is that Italian translation that wasn't coming through. I didn't find him a good guy at all. I just couldn't stand him. If he would have died somehow, I wouldn't have minded.
Well, he's an actor I'm familiar with because he's in a lot of these type of productions, especially the New York Ripper is where I immediately thought of him from. But yeah, the character, yeah, he is the doctor in New York Ripper. But there's this thing that I've noticed in a lot of Italian films, particularly the ones that have zombies, is they seem to just want to have a DJ character. And I don't know why, but it almost feels like that guy was there just to enable them to have a DJ character with a terrible voice dub. There's some really funny voice dubs in this movie, voices that make no sense. So yes, he's completely useless. He's a character where, I mean, he basically threatens corrupt cops, which just seems really stupid for a reporter to do, to say, oh, I'm going to blow the lid off this. These are people who are murdering people. And you're telling them, I'm going to expose you murdering people. So watch out. I mean, that's a bullet in the head pretty much guaranteed that night. So I don't know if that was the original idea, is that he would get killed. He should have been for being so stupid, but I honestly think it's just because they wanted a reason to get a DJ involved, because Italian filmmakers from this time period love DJs to be going, hey man, fight the system, baby. And that's exactly what we get. It is almost a different movie at that point, because that character and the DJ are kind of off of a different film somehow.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. I had turned to my significant other and I had said when that DJ was on, I'm like, man, this guy is fucking annoying. And I didn't want him to die like the reporter kind of thing. But if something would have happened and this building would have blown up or something like that, I would have been, well, they did to him what they should have done to Jar Jar or something like that. And they had the balls to do it in Italian cinema. But they didn't. He lives. Bo Svensson, I think is how you say it. I don't know. Bo, we'll call him Bo. Bo lives, but Bo, like you said, he's a politician and he's a name value guy in B movies. So just in case we want to make Thunder 2 and 3, we want to be able to slap Bo's name above the title there. So Bo sticks around, but you don't really hate Bo. There's no reason to dislike him. He's just, like you said, he's like, well, I wish I could get this over with my dickhead deputies and stuff like that. But yeah, Thunder then kicks it into overdrive. He gets a bazooka, all this stuff, people. If this doesn't sell you to watch this film, I don't know what will. He drives a fucking bulldozer and has a bazooka, and he's headed to town for business, Joe.
Yeah, the movie does a really good escalation with him, because the first big action sequence is very early on. It's a car chase where we see fences destroyed left and right. Cars are getting rolled over. So you get a nice car chase that's really effective. Then he graduates to a bow. Again, we're getting to Rambo territory. Then he gets the bazooka. And then, yes, he ends up in a amazingly hard to shoot through bulldozer that, even though it has no protective windows whatsoever, the deputies are unable to figure out how to shoot around the giant, the scoop in the front. And so, yes, in the end, he is literally bulldozing the town. They have driven this character from just trying to escape in a truck to coming back to town to just raze it to the ground with a bulldozer. And it is as magnificent as it sounds. The sequence where he's driving the bulldozer and stopping at points to shoot the bazooka at cars. So he stops. He doesn't do it while moving. He puts the brakes on, turns around, fires, and then proceeds into town with a bulldozer.
And I think, and we're getting, we're into the last little bit of the film here when we talk about this, but we can backtrack about, you mentioned Antonio Sabato. I think he was kind of the lead of the construction workers, and they're evil in this movie. They have their hand in wanting to take down the cemetery and things. Anthony Sabato is just a jerk in this. I mean, he punches women. He's dragging our trash guy around. Yeah, he's an effective jerk. Yeah, and everybody you want to see bad things happen to pretty much does, for the most part, in some fashion. I think a little bit different is trash. They kind of have a little, or Mark Gregory. I know he's not trash in this movie, but he'll always be trash to me from 1990 Bronx Warriors. But he's not a per se killing machine kind of thing like they portray, John Rambo in First Blood kind of thing. He's not that. I mean, he gets his ass kicked numerous times in this movie. We get into the end, like you said, and it's that buildup to get to that scene. I love the scene where he's just driving. He's all focused and intense, and he's driving the bulldozer and stuff. And then you think, oh, here's this intense scene. And he's like, no, wait, I'm going to stop because I'm going to turn around and bazooka the shit out of this car behind me. And I love that sequence, Joe.
Yeah, the way they play him is really interesting because, at the point where he's in the bulldozer, at this point, you would just expect him to be just massacring people with no conscience. Yeah, I mean, so much has been done to him. His girlfriend has almost been raped by Antonio Sabato and was kidnapped, and he got to her just at the last minute before something really terrible would have happened. So there is no moral room left for him not to want to go on a killing spree. Anybody in this person's position would shoot every cop he saw. And instead, even when he shoots the bazooka on that cop car, the cop car doesn't blow up the way you would expect. Just the front kind of gets fiery, but he doesn't blow the car up with the person in it. He still seems to want to just, really, I think at the end, he just wants to take out the cops and the bank. He's just pissed off at them, but he's not just on a killing spree the way you would expect. So he is an interest. The Svensson character and Mark Gregory's character, the trash character, even though you're, like I said, it's not Thunder. They are more interesting because they don't act in the stereotypical ways you expect. You think they're just going to be these stock characters, and they're not. And so they stand out from everybody else. Everybody else is playing pretty much what you would expect, again, except the reporter who's just a doofus. But everybody else is either evil or good. And Thunder and the sheriff are the interesting ones because neither one is acting the way you expect them to be. And so it's one of these, a lot of pieces in this movie that take it from just another ripoff film, which there are many, and it makes it into something better. And that's what makes it great.
Yeah, Joe, you're on fire. Because that's what I was going to say is, you just said it. Svensson, who's meant to be the Brian Dennehy character, is nothing really like Brian Dennehy, who's clearly like not a good person in First Blood. And then we have Thunder, that maybe is, and I don't think we could say John Rambo's like a bad-natured guy, but obviously war and things, PTSD, all those kinds of things you mix in there, and he's a killing machine. Thunder's not really that. Thunder seems like just a good-natured guy, but then he got pushed, and then he doesn't really want to kill a bunch of people, but he still wants to make a statement. And then that's where we get into the end of the film, which is greatly different from First Blood. We mentioned the bulldozer. He blows up some shit with his bazooka and stuff. But you would think, Joe, right? You would think he's going to go to the police station and just blow up everything. Well, he doesn't. He runs his fucking bulldozer through it first. And then what does he do? The end of the movie, he goes to the bank that may be more evil than the police station and completely runs his bulldozer through the bank and bazookas it.
And importantly, when we see him go through the police station, we then see two characters come out to show that he didn't kill anybody. As far as we know, nobody died. And I thought when he drove out, I just expected the whole station to blow up. I was like, okay, I know what this movie is. That station's going to go up in a fireball, but it doesn't. He just comes out the other side, and then we see two cops come out of the front, and they're fine. I mean, they're disturbed by the fact the bulldozer just came through their office, but, they're okay. And then the bank, as far as I know, nobody was in there either. Bizarrely, and I didn't understand what this was until the very, when it finally made sense. He gets a dead pig in the scoop of the bulldozer, and I sat there and went, "Is this supposed to be symbolic of the cops?"
Yeah, I was flabbergasted by that part, and I rewound it in everything and could not figure it out. Audience, if you're watching on Patreon, if you're watching on YouTube, give us your interpretation when you watch this movie. What was the dead pig in the bulldozer? What's the message there it's trying to send? Because that part I didn't get. I think the dead pig was in the back of a pickup truck or something like that we saw. But then the next thing we know, it's in his bulldozer, and then he takes that dead pig with his bulldozer and goes right through the bank. So maybe there's some weird connection message thing I'm not getting. But yeah, that part I had it on my notes. I was asked Joe about the dead pig and the bulldozer.
I have a theory. I don't know that this is correct, so I will let people chime in on this. Like you said, let's see if I'm just completely out here in Crazyville. But at that end sequence, the pig is in the bulldozer. He goes into the bank with it. And then the police officer, who we suddenly find out at the end of the film is also part Native American, because that's everybody or half the town, apparently, and says to him, take off your clothes. Then we don't see Thunder again. But he says, take off your clothes. And then the next thing is Svensson comes in and says, where is he? And the cop points to the bank vault that Trash must have fired a missile, 6 or 7 rockets into to blow it up. And he says, well, he's in there. And we see some kind of heap of burning something. And the only thing I can think is, did he dress the pig up in clothing to make it look like flesh and clothes to say that's him burning? Because otherwise, I have no explanation for that, because it's obviously intentional.
Yeah, no, now that's pretty cool. I didn't think of that at all, but I like that, Joe. Yeah, we're going with that. That makes it even better. Yeah, I agree 100%. Great, awesome. That solved it for me, Joe. That's why I knew I would ask you about it, and now I've got an answer that I think is, yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, he doesn't kill anybody. He goes to the bank. He shoots the shit out of the bank with like you said, 6, 7 rockets, whatever it is. Blows up the bank. The guy helps him out. We don't see Thunder again. And then, much like a lot of Italian cinema does, we end on a really weird note. We covered this really weird note in the last film we did with Reb Brown, which I believe we did Strike Commando, right? With a really strange ending there where he does a voiceover and stuff, but not to be outdone, even though this was filmed before Strike Commando. Another Stallone ripoff picture. Kids are playing or conversing outside the bank area or in the downtown area, and Thunder will live forever or whatever he says, or Thunder won't die, in a weird voiceover, and the kid just runs off for, again, cut 10 minutes off this film. We see the kid run for like literally 90 seconds of runtime. We don't need that. Thunder will live forever, turn to run off, cut, end of movie, Joe.
Well, yeah, I thought when he ran off, I thought the camera would pan a bit to the right and we would see Thunder standing there, like smiling, with his face covered, but we would know it was, that's what the setup is that he realizes that the people are on his side, because that was kind of the later part of the film was, okay, actually it's funny, the DJ at one point says, hey, destroy the town, but don't go too far because otherwise the feds are going to come in. So it's almost this weird thing where you expect the FBI or somebody to, like, tanks to show up, and it never happens. So yeah, we get this terrible voiceover. Say again.
Oh, I said, no, we don't want the National Guard in here.
Right. Well, that's where they seem to be going. And that voiceover, there is no way that was a child. That was an adult doing a child's voice. It is awful and great all at once. But yes, we get this long thing where we watch him running and nothing happens. And the next thing we see is then Thunder and his girlfriend, fiance, whatever, in the back of a truck driving off, and then we get credits. That part's fine, but the child stuff goes on way too long because it doesn't lead to anything.
No, you're right. He can say the line, go to turn to run off, and then cut, go to the truck, leaving and stuff. You're right. I think I would have liked the movie better if it would have panned somewhere and we see maybe a cowboy hatted, kind of Thunder, in disguise, you know what I mean, hiding kind of thing, and we see him, and maybe it ends there. But I'm fine with the truck driving off. But really, the only time we don't even see him really there either. The last time we see him is in the bank, and then we don't see Thunder again, kind of thing. But to wrap this one up, I can't recommend this highly enough. I know it's First Blood. We mentioned it's 95% First Blood, but there's something else that separates it, I think. We get some weird dubbing and dialogue, and there's the unintentional comedy and those kinds of moments that people that are going to want to watch bad movies kind of thing. But I don't think this is a necessarily bad film. Like I said, there's a lot of beautiful cinematography. There's a lot of cool action shots. There's a lot of cool slow motion shots. We've got thunder jumping through a front window of a storefront. We've got him as he's getting lassoed and chased by these rednecks where they're going to rope him and drag him behind their pickup truck. We got all kinds of slow motion, cool stuff. Thunder jumps off a fucking cliff into a river below. There's a lot of really cool stuff in this movie. The cut on Tubi is serviceable. It's at minimum, I would say, like DVD quality at least. Somebody out there, put this on Blu-ray, put this on 4K. I would be the first in line, Joe.
Yeah, I don't remember who. There's a filmmaker who's fairly well known who has been championing to get this thing remastered and put in the whole series to be put out, because you're right. There are little aspects that do give away what it is. It is using First Blood's template, although I don't think, even calling it a ripoff, it definitely is following the formula, but I don't think it is a cynical ripoff. They figured out, okay, we can take that template and we can apply it to another group of people who were persecuted. We're not going to redo the Vietnam veteran thing. We're going to move this to Native Americans because you still have that instant sympathy. So they were smart enough to shift that. And then the action sequences are really fun. They're well done. We have helicopters. This is not a cheap looking film for the most part. The bank is clearly it's got walls made of cardboard. You can see that because unfortunately they shoot it from the side occasionally, which is not a good idea, but that's okay. And the dubbing gives away that it's an Italian
so's the
film.
police station. Anything he bulldozers is made looking thin.
But that's minor stuff. This is nitpicky stuff because you do have this beautiful vista. You do have these good action sequences. You have cars being destroyed. These are not beat up cars that they found at an empty lot. These are, they look like police cars. They're getting trashed. And, the bulldozer thing is great. He's driving a bulldozer. It's real. It's not a car with cardboard siding on it. It is a bulldozer. So we have all these really great pieces that make it better than, again, if you just read what it is, you go, oh, okay, I've seen Italian ripoff films. I know what we're in for. We're in for, cheap looking everything and, maybe one or two good action sequences and everything else is wandering through the woods. And instead, this is very good looking. It deserves, as you said, this should be seen in high definition because of the cinematography. You have all these beautiful areas. Why would you not want to see a good version of this? And on top of that, it's a lot of fun. It feels like if you're going to have a ripoff film, this is how you do it, where it actually feels like they took the right pieces and did something interesting with them. And that's why it's exceptional.
Yeah, and as I continue to try to sell thunder on everybody that they should go run to Tubi and watch it, or YouTube or whatever, but Tubi's cut, like I said, is at minimum DVD quality. If I haven't sold it to you now, here's the kicker. It is directed by I want to say Fabrizio De Inglise, who also does an amazing Italian picture that's very dear to my heart called Killer Crocodile. So if you have not seen Killer Crocodile, you will have a lot of fun watching that as well. But again, he did all three. Fabrizio De Inglise, if that's how you say it. I hope I'm close there. My last name's Kabasinski, so I get it if it's wrong. But yeah, he did all three Thunder Warriors. There's three of them. He went on to something called Karate Warrior or something. I don't know what that is, but he did like 6 of them. So that might have to be something to revisit, because I think I might even have the first one on VHS and I've just never watched it. But so yeah, Killer Crocodile directs this. Although if you don't like him, what I've heard is he didn't really direct this. That a guy, Enzio Castorelli or something like that, who directs a film called Great White, which the theatrical poster is sitting about 12 feet from me over there on my wall, an Italian Jaws ripoff film kind of thing. So there's lots of good stuff about this, Joe.
Yeah, and this is pretty common when you get into these types of movies. You often find that maybe there was more than one director, or maybe different directors did different things. And Fabrizio was involved in a lot of really well-known Italian films. He was a producer on The New York Ripper, Zombie 2, Zombie Holocaust, House by the Cemetery. So this is somebody, and that's what I wonder is, maybe he was really the producer and Enzo was actually the director, or vice versa, or whatever. There's a lot of that. When you dive into this, you find that these people all knew each other and they were just kind of bouncing around doing different things, and whatever. Who cares? The important part is you get a great film out of this genre with these directors. And so this is, whoever directed it, this is definitely a step above what, I mean, other Italian ripoff films, they're delightful, they're fun, I love them, but this feels like it has more heft to it than a lot of the other ones that are just kind of empty imitations. Fun and silly and great to watch, but this feels like it was made better than a lot of the other stuff, which isn't to say I don't like that other stuff. I love it. But this deserves a place with a Vinegar Syndrome or a Severin or somebody to do a nice restoration and get a box set out.
Yeah, I will say, and I'll go off of that as we're wrapping up the show for tonight, but See Thunder, 1983. It's on Thunder on Tubi and stuff. If you're going to try to look it up on YouTube or something, it could be under Thunder Warrior. Yeah, I think the big thing to take away from this is this feels like there is more of emotion to a film like this. I mean, we get what right and wrong is and stuff like that, and we know, the Vietnam vets getting persecuted by their own U.S. citizens when they come back. Native Americans kind of, oh hey, we remember that. You know what I'm saying? So there's that component, like you said, people that have been persecuted, that kind of thing. That element's going on. It feels more emotion in this film than some of the other ripoffs. Like if you watch Great White, you're not going to say, well, that's an emotional ripoff of Jaws. Wow, that was powerful. No, you're going to be like, that's a dumb ripoff of Jaws, but it's really fun to watch. I think Thunder's a little bit different there because of that component, Joe, and all the kind of racism and stuff that is packed into this movie.
Yeah, that's what I mean about, like Shocking Dark. Yeah, it's an Aliens ripoff, and it's silly because it's also the Terminator. I watch that, and I just have a great time with it, but I don't really think about it all that much because you know what it is, and that's all it is, and that's fine, but that's all it is. This feels like, again, they took it could be as simple as somebody looking at First Blood and saying, you know what, this would actually have as much emotional weight if we actually transferred it onto a Native American, because it's another group of people who have been persecuted for a long time. And so it builds in this idea that this is a character who, when he finally snaps and starts going on a wrecking, demolition warpath, you understand why. And you don't sit there and go, well, that's a little bit overboard, because they lead up to it and they escalate it properly. There's something else. A lot of other movies like this, their editing might be off, their pacing might be off, and things kind of don't make sense. None of that is here. Everything kind of follows and you know where it's going, but it makes sense where it ends up. There's not a scene missing or something. Why are we doing this now? It's a day later. What happened? That's not here. This is actually well constructed and it's well executed. And that, along with the fact that it seems to be a smart use of a familiar story, that's what makes it good. And I agree. The Tubi version, yeah, I think it is DVD. I agree with you, but it's perfectly watchable. The sound and the video are fine. It's not, mangled. And so you can watch it for free, and you should watch it. And hopefully at some point pay a good amount of money for a really nice version of it, a box set. Maybe this will get enough people watching this thing and people will take notice because it's worth seeing.
Oh yeah, Thunder 1, 2, and 3 Blu-ray or something like that. Come on, guys, somebody step up and do this. But I think we both agree this is a winner. You should go out and watch it. Joe, when people want to know more about Joe from Ozone Late Night, where can they go?
Very, very simple. Just go to ozonenightmare.com and you will see 2 links on that page. One is for the artwork that I do, and then the other is for the podcast that I do, where I talk about movies like this and other movies, because Len and I have a shared love of film. Whether the films are considered good or bad, it is just wonderful to watch. And again, I hadn't seen this one, so this was a great surprise for me because I'd heard of it, had never gotten around to seeing it. Perfect excuse to watch it. Watch it on Tubi. You don't even have to have an account. There's no excuse not to go watch movies like this. And I just had a blast. So thank you so much for telling me to watch this movie and letting me talk about it, because it was magnificent.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like I said, this is gonna warm my heart for a while, Joe, knowing that I turned you on to Thunder and you didn't even know what it was, kind of thing, and here we are. But excellent, that warms my heart. So
and one last thing, this is. Let me interject. I'm sorry, Len. I didn't mean to cut you off. This is why you should go and look on Tubi and look around, because there's so much of this stuff, and I've watched, and Len and I have talked about a lot of these movies. We've been doing this for a while, and even now, there's a movie where I hadn't seen it, and Len brought it to my attention, and hopefully we can do that for some people watching. If you've skipped out on this one or just never gotten to it, fix that immediately and look around, because there's a lot of this stuff, and a lot of it's really good, so go watch it.
Yes, agreed, 1,000,000,000%. That's what the Forgotten Movie Den's supposed to be all about. That's why I started this, because somebody said, well, I never saw Fist Fighter. And I'm like, what? How did you not see Fist Fighter? George Romero's ripped in it, and say, I mean, how did you miss that? Or how did you miss American Ninja 3 Blood Hunt? Or how did you all the Killer Crocodile, you name it, 1990 Bronx Warriors. Or we get to tonight, and how did you miss 1983's Thunder? But now there's no excuse, like you said, Joe. Get out there and watch it. For Joe from Ozone Late Night, I'm writer and director Len Kabasinski of Killer Wolf Films. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Support Joe on OzoneNightmare.com. Support me on patreon.com/KillerWolfFilms, and you'll get way more episodes of this kind of stuff where we hope you have fun with it. And we turned you on to a really awesome movie, Thunder. Go watch it, people. Good night.